Welcome to Shenanigans Ensue with
Mary SanGiovanni!
Folks, welcome to Cosmic Shenanigans. I'm Mary SanGiovanni, and as always, we are up to shenanigans here of cosmic proportions and non-Euclidean geometries and whatnots. This week, we're going to be talking about a novel called Southern Gods by John Hornor Jacobs. It came out from Nightshade Books in 2011, and it is chock full of cosmic horror-y goodness. Now, it can be argued that this is more Lovecraftian based because he does use some of the mythology of Lovecraft, but there's also some of the mythology of Robert Chambers. And we're going to get into that when we get into the pantheon of gods. But I would also argue that despite the overlap of Lovecraftian pantheon here, we have a more or less modern cosmic horror type of story. We do have that sense of futility, that sense of nihilism, in the face of powers that are greater than anything we can imagine. And without giving away too many spoilers, certain characters in the book make discoveries which challenge their religious faith and their sense of the way the world works and what kind of power we might have as individuals and how that power might fail if our basic faith is shaken. Now, what the story seems to come around to say, I feel, is that having faith in something, having faith in, even when you're faced with certain elements of truth, which contradict maybe what you used to believe. Having faith and hope in the possibility of good in the world and the possibility of good in the universe is maybe the only kind of real faith we can have, and maybe the most pure faith that we can have in anything. We do have a sense of cults, if we're going to check off that particular checkbox, but I wouldn't say they're cults of anything organized, really. It's more that, it's more like an infection that spreads in this book. The basic premise, and again, trying not to give away too many spoilers, the basic premise is that this man, Lewis Bull Ingram, they call him Bull, and I think that's significant later on. They call him Bull Ingram, and he's an ex-Marine. And he is hired, I guess he's kind of what you'd think of as a fixer, maybe. And he is hired by his employers he works for a music man, basically, a radio station DJ, a radio station company owner, who wants him to hunt down this pirate radio station that is broadcasting music that's said to drive the living insane, like violently, homicidally insane, and raise the dead. And it's the music of rambling John Hastur that is said to cause this. As far as cults go, as I said, it's not so much of an organized cult of people trying to make this happen. It's more of an infection that spreads to people in hearing this music. And this is why I say there's more of an influence of maybe Robert Chambers in this cosmic horror than there is so much Lovecraft, because what we have is an object or entity or, some type of thing that in coming in contact with it causes madness. And that's pretty much the idea behind The King in Yellow, is that anybody who reads The King in Yellow or sees the play is driven insane. And the notion of a cursed object in that way is fairly common in cosmic horror, but particularly I think from the legacy of Robert Chambers and The King in Yellow. The yellow sign makes an appearance in this story. And again, it's something we're going to talk about in a little bit, about the significance of it and how Jacobs, in my opinion, really qualifies the actual nature of the yellow sign, what it means and what its significance is, not just in his novel, but in chamber stories as well. But first, let's talk about the ancient gods, because really, I think that if there is said to be any staple of cosmic horror, it is definitely a pantheon of horror gods of cosmic proportions that are either malevolent in terms of, or that appear to be malevolent to us because they are capricious and willful and don't really think of us as anything but playthings, or they're completely and utterly indifferent. Now, Jacobs introduces the idea that even the sense of good, even the deities in this pantheon that he's created, even these deities that appear to be good, even that is again only through our lens of humanity. It's only through our perception that we see them as good, and it's really only because they're not trying to destroy us, and that they occasionally do offer help. Now, whether that's to give us a fighting chance in this game that they're watching, or whether they, for whatever reason, feel sorry for us the way maybe we feel sorry for, abandoned animals on the side of the road or something. The nature of good and evil here, and in most cosmic horror stories, is really a gray area, and it's really kind of irrelevant. The point is this an entity that's trying to destroy us, or an entity that's not trying to destroy us? One of the gods, again, we don't often get a glimpse into their personality or direct contact. In this case, this god, speaks to Bull Ingram through dreams, which is often how cosmic horror entities in the past have contacted human beings. And we don't often get to see much of their personality, but this one does offer to help. And when asked why, Bull has never really given a straight answer. Okay. What I find interesting about this, it's a pantheon of gods, and I love this word, and godlings. Bull Ingram refers to them as teenager gods. The idea that these outer gods, these elder gods, are so volatile and so changing all the time that pieces of them can split off and become their own littler gods and gain autonomy. I think that's kind of a fascinating idea, and that's what happens in this pantheon. There are these ancient outer gods from, beyond the universe, and their constantly changing bodies can give birth to these lesser gods. Now, Hastur is considered one of the lesser gods, and he mentions Cthulhu and a couple other god names that overlap other mythologies for a sense of realism. But Hastur's the main focus in this particular book. What we have here is the concept that the Catholic Church, the Christian religion, is aware that our God may not exist, or if he does, he is just one of many, and these gods are competing. And at first, I guess the belief was that the gods created the worlds, created the universe, and then kind of took a step back because it would be like, doodling on a napkin, I guess. But that some gods decided to get involved in the affairs of people. And what that caused essentially was a lot of strife for people, that they enjoyed games of torture and torment. And that a couple of other gods, not many, Cybele and Mithras, were, as we perceive them, benevolent gods. They tried to help. They infused human beings with enough intelligence to be able to evolve and to be able to fight back, to learn to read, to learn the ancient spells that would hold both gods and godlings at bay. Now, before we get into Hastur, let's look at Mithras, because Mithras is from an actual religion, an ancient Roman religion, which was eventually superseded by Christianity. It was, I believe, an old Zoroastrian divinity. He's gone under names like Mithras, and a couple other variations, but it's basically the same god, with an entire Mithras mysteries type of religion built around worshiping this one particular god. I wouldn't exactly say it was a monotheistic religion, because there were acknowledgments that the other Greek and Roman gods existed, but Mithras was sort of, I can't even say a creator god, but a central god in this particular this particular religion. He was the god of covenant, light, and oath. In addition, according to the research I could find on him, he was the god of contracts. He was a judicial figure and all-seeing protector of truth, and the guardian of cattle, the harvest, and of the waters. Now that's significant in a couple of symbolic ways, okay? As a protector of truth, he says to Bull Ingram in the story that he is for the soldier fighting for his homeland. He is for the family. He is for the children. Essentially, he is for fairness. And there's an unfair advantage to gods picking on human beings. If we are to attribute any motivation for Mithras helping the characters in this novel, it might very well be that he doesn't mind that there's fights going on, but he wants them to fight fair. And a lot of these malevolent gods don't fight fair. As a guardian of the cattle, in the real pottery and writings and hieroglyphics, and in a lot of the Zoroastrian relics about Mithras, what we see is over and over again is a banquet, which is apparently a significant incident in this particular god's history, and also the destruction of a bull. He fights a bull, and this is apparently one of the most repetitive images about Mithras in history. That in almost every instance that Mithras appears, he has conquered a bull. Now, our character is named Bull Ingram, and and he has focused on Bull Ingram. There's a connection there. Mithras has chosen him and offers to help him if he needs it. And I think that there's sort of a symbolic connection there, that his conquering of this bull, which Jacobs is clearly aware of, because in the dream sequence in which Mithras appears, this particular image of him conquering the bull is on his armor, is on Mithras's armor. So there is, I think, some symbolism there that he is drawn to Bull Ingram. Of all the human beings in this fight, this big man, this big human being, he wants to help him. And, one wonders why there's that connection there, but there is. That he is also the guardian of the waters is significant. Water plays an important role in a lot of cosmic horror things. I don't know if maybe Lovecraft had a fear of the ocean, but a lot of his gods are aquatic in nature and really kind of embody the squelchy, creepy, crawly aspects of sea life. There's a lot of water in this particular Arkansas place. They live by a major river, and life along these riverbanks is the setting, the backdrop for this particular story. So water is significant. It's a means of travel. It's a means of renewal in a lot of cases. For the children in the story, for the adults in the story, it's a symbol, I think, often of a second chance, or a third chance. When it is seen particularly toward the end, when Jacobs is describing the darkness pouring in from the outer edges of the universe, from alternate realities, he describes it like water pouring over the side of something. So water does have a significance, and Mithras is the guardian of waters. All this to say that again, there is no real benevolent God. There are only gods who have differing degrees of indifference or hostility toward us. But let's talk about one who is particularly hostile toward us, and that's Hastur. Now, Hastur was not a creation of Lovecraft's, okay? Hastur was a creation of Robert Chambers that Lovecraft adapted fairly readily and built on, and that after him, even more so than Lovecraft himself, a lot of the Lovecraftian circle built on the background of Hastur. Hastur was mentioned in Robert Chambers' work as both a place, given how you read certain things about Carcosa, but it was a place in Carcosa, it was a lake in Carcosa, and also it was a person. I believe the person association, though, came from Lovecraft. I could be wrong on that finer point, but I'm pretty sure that at least Chambers referred to it more as a place, but it could have been a place named for a particular entity, which is the King in Yellow. And synonymous with the King in Yellow is the god Hastur. Hastur, theoretically, the King in Yellow is Hastur, this god of chaos, really, and destruction. Hastur is, if you had a patron god of insanity, it would probably be him. And he's really kind of a fascinating god because, again, most Lovecraftian elder gods, the outer gods of the universe, okay, are such awesome powers. They're such cosmically enormous powers that they're not even really aware that we exist. Tapping into those powers, drawing their attention to us, is dangerous only because it would be like handling live wires. It would be like handling an entire state of live wires, okay, or entire country of live wires. It's just too big and too powerful for any one person to juggle, and too chaotic. You know, there's no real way to control that much power. It doesn't apply to all of Lovecraft's gods, and it certainly doesn't apply to Hastur. Hastur and Nyarlathotep are probably the only two gods that interact with people. Nyarlathotep is considered one of the elder gods, not one of the old ones. Hastur, I believe, is considered one of the old ones, like Cthulhu. And he does interact with people, maybe even more directly than Cthulhu, maybe even more directly than Nyarlathotep. He actually, in Chambers' work, is said to interact with people, to mingle with them, to talk with them, and to drive them insane, pretty much based on his proximity. So he's sort of a fascinating god, and the King in Yellow, I think, because it is so vague, because Chambers left it vague, and because a lot of the mythology of Lovecraft's work developed also as a result of being vague, I think there's almost a sense of urban legend to Hastur. I think he's an interesting god to play around with because there aren't such hard and fast rules that define his abilities, his powers. Like I said, there's even some overlap as to whether he's a place or a person. One consistent thing about Hastur, though, that we see, and it makes an appearance in this particular novel, is the yellow sign. Now, I think that Jacobs maybe explains it better than I've ever heard it explained, as a sign of a covenant. That it's not a sign of protection on the person who is in possession of this symbol, or who has this symbol marked on him or her in some way. But it's more like a notice to the other gods that Hastur is present here, or that he somehow owns this person, or owns this place. It is a marking of territory, really, but it is a kind of covenant. And again, it's interesting that Mithras, of all the gods, is the god of covenants and contracts, because what we get again is maybe the antithesis of that in Hastur, that his yellow sign is a kind of covenant, that for as long as and this is true in Chambers' work as well, as long as a person is in possession of the yellow sign, the king in yellow will not kill him. And that other things, other types of death will not touch this person. That does not mean that insanity won't touch this person, or that death in some other way won't come eventually. But it will be up to the king in yellow to decide. It will be up to Hastur to decide the time and place. And it is a temporary promise, I guess, in a way, a kind of signing your soul over to the devil, to be in possession of the yellow sign. And to come back to religion in Southern gods, that's what we kind of have here. We have an already a kind of bluesy feel of like Robert Johnson at the crossroads, selling his soul to the devil for success. That's almost like the flavor of this particular book, this particular cosmic horror novel book, that the idea of angels and demons is really just a reframing of cosmic horror gods and lesser gods, the godlings, that what we think of as demons and possession are really just the lesser gods finding ways to use us. And that brings us to, I think, another interesting point that is both, a cosmic horror element, and I think also pretty deftly handled in this novel by Jacobs, is the idea of life and death and the afterlife and the soul. There is a character who is possessed by one of the gods at one point that says that we are not souls, that we don't have them, that the only thing in this life is bodies. And that's why the lesser gods fight over human beings, because in order to experience the sensual, physical world, you need a physical body to do it. And a lot of these gods are, if there is one thing they are lacking, I mean, they can change shape, they can appear as other people, they can appear in dreams, they have a limitless power, but they don't have physical bodies, not in the sense that we know it. And so that they want our bodies. So there's one of the cosmic horrors is this idea that throughout the book, because it is assumed that one of these lesser gods is telling them this, and this has come up in a cosmic horror before, the idea that the gods may lie to us. Or, I mean, what is worse, that the gods would lie to us, or that they're telling us a horrific truth, that there is nothing after death, that we cease to be, and not only do we cease to be, but we cease to be remembered. That ultimately the person we were never was. And that feeds into this cosmic horror nihilism idea that, why bother? Why ever have existed in the first place? Because ultimately, there is no purpose. There is no point. There is a lot of comparison and conflict between the living and the dead in this particular novel. It's interesting because it's almost as if Jacob found a way to work zombies into cosmic horror, but not zombies in a traditional sense. But the dead do rise when listening to John Hastur's music. And they do fight. They do attack people. This music spurs people to violence. It spurs them to hatred. It spurs them to stop seeing human beings as human beings. They become utterly insignificant. And again, and I've mentioned this before in other episodes, one of the brilliant things I'm seeing in modern cosmic horror are old cosmic horror concepts reworked and kind of twisted and reshaped in these fascinating ways, these really awesome, interesting ways that still get the point across, but in a unique and interesting type of conveyance for such things. And this idea that that sort of recurring nihilism that is absolutely as much a staple in cosmic horror as the gods themselves, it does appear. You get people who once they have learned something about this world, or about the universe around them in the greater scheme of things, can never unknow it. And it irrevocably changes them. They can never go back to the peace and security they had before. And that is most definitely one of the themes in this novel, that in learning the truth, you can't unlearn it. You can't go back to believing that everything is okay. And even what we would consider a possibly happy ending still has an indelible and in many ways horrific mark of knowing, of the horror of knowing and not being able to forget, in this part, in this, for at least for one of the more endearing characters, that in having gone through this, and this is again, another cosmic horror tenet, mostly of modern cosmic horror, that you can have a happy ending if by happy you mean that the character survives and is more or less okay, can function, but has gone through something that changes them completely, that they will never be the same again. And I think finally what we have, and again, this is more a modern cosmic horror type of theme. It was not present really in Lovecraft's work, but it does seem to be present in a lot of modern cosmic horror. And I think it reflects our times and our view of ourselves and each other and the world around us, that when being faced with this ultimate, devastating notion that not only are we not the center of the universe, that we're not really even a blip on the radar, to things far more powerful, that we have to reframe what is important to us. We have to reframe the whole concept of significance, sometimes on a much smaller scale. We may not be important to the universe, but we're important to each other. We may not be loved by a benevolent God somewhere out in the cosmos, but we love each other. And that there are people who love us enough to sacrifice, and a sacrifice in this particular novel, both good and bad, is a constant theme. That in order to call the elder gods, in order to bend what little of bending you can do of these creatures to your will, it requires a supreme sacrifice. In order to banish them, it requires the same kind of supreme sacrifice. So sacrifice, but what sacrifice really comes down to is a heroic act by an individual. And that act is an act of love. That one individual changes the course of things. That changes the course of life and death. And that's significant. That there is a significance in that moment for that one person, to become something greater than just a human shell. And, I think that this novel does that admirably. So definitely check it out if you haven't. It's Southern Gods by John Hornor Jacobs. Came out in 2011 from Nightshade Books. And that's it for this week. Next week, we'll be back to more cosmic shenanigans, more kinds of fun, non-Euclidean fun from the outer limits of the universe. And, I look forward to doing that with you. If you like this podcast, you may like another podcast that I co-host, which is The Horror Show with Brian Keene. It, as well as Cosmic Shenanigans, past, present, and future, all are one, in Project Entertainment Network, where you can find us, or you can check out iTunes, Spotify, our iHeartRadio, all the places where you'd normally get a podcast. You can find us for free and check us out. We have a shout out to our engineer, Dave Thomas. He's struggling with some health stuff, but he is here today like a trooper, and he is still he is still working his own cosmic engineering magic for Cosmic Shenanigans. So again, if you can contribute to his GoFundMe, if you go to the GoFundMe and you type in Dave Thomas, you can contribute there and help him out. And we'd really, really appreciate it if you could. And that's it for this week. I'll see you next week. Bye.
There shall come a podcast like no other. Defenders Dialogue. Marvel Comics' original superhero non-team convenes once again. Comic book writers and authors Brian Keene and Christopher Golden take us back to the 70s and 80s as they discuss Marvel's most dynamic collection of superheroes, Defenders Dialogue with Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Tuesdays exclusively on Project Entertainment Network.